Hey everyone, it's me, it's Jean, and this is my channel. This is a little bit of a sidebar. This won't be on my Spotify, but it's going to be on my YouTube. This is kind of a sidebar because I don't have a lot of time really. So at least on my YouTube, I'm going to give you kind of the behind the scenes of like what I've been doing and like where I get my information from, my references, all that good stuff. So first I want to show you my little trusty notebook that I just got. This is a little tiny guy that I can take with me wherever I go. And then this is my main notebook that, you write all your shit down and then I get my notes from that. So right now we are currently in the middle of the episode, at the beginning of the episode 2. I just wrapped up episode 1 on Michelle Remembers. And episode 2 is going to kind of go back into Michelle Remembers, but also into the McMartin case, which is funny. I keep saying the McGrath. So strangely and funny enough, I was at work and I was like, why? What is with McGrath? Like, is there anything kind of happening with McGrath? Actually, there is. There was a boy who was unalived in 2022. He was stabbed to death in Connecticut, and his last name is McGrath. So I don't know if, well, I do know. I'm going to get into it because, and it doesn't have anything to do with satanic panic of anything of that nature, but I looked up this case and I think the world needs to hear about it because honestly I'm way down in South Carolina, so anything that really happens up north I'm a little bit in the dark. However though, I can't explain it why it popped in my head, so I'm gonna run with it. And don't forget, I am also doing this channel with the baseline, or this season with the baseline of delusion and psychosis. So I guess that's my own little delusion. I don't know what happened there, but I was re-listening to that first episode and I kept saying McGrath, and yeah, so I looked it up. Whatever or wherever that came from, coincidental, I don't know. But if you know me, then you know that I am not so much into coincidences. So my own delusion, whatever. I just had to bring it up. But with that being said, I'm going to wrap up the McMartin daycare case that happened in LA. So way back in 1983. And unfortunately, it was the beginning. And I don't want to say victim because I don't like using that word victim, because I actually don't know if this case even like what happened. It's very easy to be skeptical in this case. Very, very easy to be skeptical because of what transpired. What came out of it. He was proven innocent, so we have to go by that. That is the right thing to do when it comes to the justice system. Unfortunately, it's a horrible thing at times with the justice system. You don't get the justice that you need or deserve. So that's why I say I honestly don't know. I don't know. But I'm just going by the scratching surfaces of research. There's so much research to this case that I had said before. It took 10 years in our court system because there was so much misinformation. I believe this case, this trial has been a couple times, which we all know, the double jeopardy, so I'm not quite sure. There's always loopholes and everything, so I think 4 people at first, but I'll get into the surface of it. But I wanted to show you, which I did, I think in my YouTube channel with episode 1, about this book that ironically funny because it started with a book. But this cool book was written by Professor at Brown, by Ross Cheat or Chet. I don't know how to say it. But the one thing y'all have to know too is that there's controversy around this book. A lot of controversy. A lot of people have argued this. Because basically this book gets into the politics, the psychology, and the essay of children. So, and the name of the book is Witch Hunt Narrative. And it makes a lot of sense because this case was what it was, right? With not so much of evidence, and then it went on later in the early 90s to be labeled as a hoax. Now, the witch hunt of it is the fear that was caused in this whole thing. All because of Michelle's book. Like, this poor family, her sister and her mom died, of the same cancer my father died of, which back in the 90s, at least, shit, it took you quickly, which is Hodgkin's lymphoma. Her poor mother died with people believing that she gave her child over to a satanic cult and did all these awful things to her. And her sister lives with this stigma. Larry's family, his wife, his children, they suffer the consequences of this, because that in itself, Michelle, was debunked. The whole book was debunked. It was bullshit. She had DID, which is it's an dissociative identity disorder, where your personality is due to trauma, who knows why her brain split, right? People do believe that something happened to her. The woman who transcribed the book, she believes something happened to her. She doesn't necessarily know if it was ritualistic or what, but Michelle's father was an alcoholic, abusive alcoholic. So he may have done something to her. Who knows? But she ruined it because she ran with this, all because she had an obsession with her therapist, and she got him. She succeeded. She succeeded in getting him, no matter at any cost. That is psychosis. Okay, that is a form of psychosis. There's a whole long list. It could be obsession, stalker. Even Larry's daughter was like, Michelle stalked this family when they were still married, or when Larry was still married to his wife. So a lot of destruction, a lot of things happened because of this Michelle Remembers book. The Catholic Church backed it. There's, in this documentary that I'm getting a lot of my information, like baseline, and then splitting off, fact checking and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just common sense now. Maybe not then, because the 80s were very innocent to some people. They weren't innocent to other people. And I've said that before. The Catholic Church with it. The Catholic Church made money. I'm sorry, you did. They made money off of this. They made money off of Michelle. They made money off of her press releases because she went on tour. She's been on Oprah. She was on Geraldo. She was on I think Ricky Lake. Like, Ricky Lake did a sequence back then, late 80s, early 90s, about satanic rituals. This also falls under the category of false memories, or recalled memories, which I was talking to a friend recently. And because of all of this jazz, I am a person who is extremely, extremely, extremely skeptical of pulled memories or recalled memories from trauma. I'm not a person who believes in hypnosis. I personally cannot be hypnotized. Other people out there that can't be hypnotized, those are the people that you can't manipulate, right? A lot of other things had been fallen under the umbrella of satanic panic. And one of those is a woman who was convicted. She was the only one really convicted. She was a preschool teacher. And she had to serve up to, I think, 48 years in New Jersey because she was found guilty, which led... Forgive me, ma'am, for not remembering your name. I don't even have means to really look it up of her name, but Larry's wife is the one who reached out and ended all of this because people were going to jail, and she knew the truth. She knew the truth. I am not also claiming that I do not believe real victims who've had traumatic experiences due to, this is so hard for me to say, because nobody really knows if it's true or not. That's why it falls under the conspiracy theory of ritual abuse. Because I know what I know about religion, I am going to say that it's less likely. But if it is happening, nobody's really going to know about it because they're too smart. Okay, we're seeing it. This is actually part of the reason why I'm talking about all this is because now with the Epstein files coming out, with all those victims that were never believed and they told them it was all blah, 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 right? It's not blah, blah, blah. These things actually happen to these women, these men too. It's not just women. You know, there was a point back in the 80s, I'm just going to jump back. There was a point back in the 80s that satanic panic was blamed on the missing children, hundreds of missing children. There was a belief out there that around Easter that babies would come up missing because of this ritual stuff that they would do, because Easter and Christmas are two of the biggest holidays in the Christian faith. Doesn't matter what umbrella of Christianity you fall under, those two holidays are very big. I'm sorry, unless you're Jewish. You don't celebrate Christmas, but you celebrate Hanukkah. So it's still correlated and it's still around the same time. Pagans celebrate on the 21st for Yule because of the winter solstice. If you don't know what happens, the true tradition of these things, then maybe I can understand the pulling of this idea that these things happen. But back to the missing children, I don't know if it's religion or if it's just disgusting human beings that like to take children. And that's why I brought up Epstein, because they were trafficking. I shouldn't even say that word on here, but they were taking children and they were doing these things to them. I think because children are so innocent, and when they come up missing, fear takes over for a lot of people, and not saying, you know, the parents of, which in a lot of these cases is where it was coming from. But in other cases of people who fall under the category of fear, a lot of things happen in your brain chemically when you're under the state of fear or the state of fight or flight. So a lot of things come up, and if you're not in a healthy place and you see things that you don't understand, I can see how these things get misunderstood. But this is my logical brain. As of now, doing research, I've gone down some rabbit holes, but I haven't come across any of this stuff. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I want to, because it's so deeply disturbing. But the reason I'm talking about satanic panic is because real things did happen. The aftermath of what happened caused so much fear in the religious community that they passed that fear to their children. I'm one of them. Now, the ones who didn't take it seriously, I believe, were taken advantage of. That's my opinion. They were taken advantage of because if they don't believe it's happening, it makes it easy to do so. When you're in the court systems and you're seeing this all over TV, right? Local television back in the 80s, and they're pushing this narrative out on the media that it's satanic ritual, pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And people who absolutely are just normal people who are spiritual back then were taken advantage of by their fears, and it was used against them. So they went into a panic. That's why they call it satanic panic. Now, bad people look for this shit, okay? They look for vulnerabilities. They look for strategic ways to get around things. And in my personal opinion, I think that's what happened. Excuse me. I think that's what happened. They found loopholes in the court system because of this panic, right? Because every child was believed in this case, in the McMartin case. They were all believed by a very large organization, children's organization, the Catholic Church, the psychotherapists, therapists out there took advantage of this because it was a money grab. There's a couple people that are products of it too who practice actually today and say that these things actually happened and started their own cult. I'm afraid to talk about her because I don't want people to come after me. But that person was a product of it. So these, like, in that person that I'm not mentioning, her therapist is the one who took advantage of it and did a disservice to her. And she's still living under this psychosis of believing that it actually happened. That was another epidemic. Money grab. It's all about money. You just got to follow the money. So yeah, all of them are believed. So when it came out as a hoax in the early 90s, that ended it, because I believe the court systems realized that there was nothing really in place to properly protect kids, to properly protect them. Not just against daycares and schools and churches and all this other stuff, but at home, because statistically what we know now. Bad people saw this happening on the national news, that was happening in LA, and I believe caused more harm, because they realized kids are not believed anymore. They're not believed. They don't have the proper things in place. How I can argue this? So I'm going to do all this stuff, right? And then they use fear to, on a different scale, to make sure that they don't vocalize things, because then they would believed. Here we are in 2026, and most victims are not believed. That's where I have a problem. Regardless if these kids were right or wrong, the court systems failed these kids, and are still failing these kids. And they're failing a lot of women out there too. Epstein is the best example of it. Now, when was the last time that we saw anything come close to satanic panic? Pizzagate. I fell for it. Documentaries that I kept on seeing, because I'm a documentary girl, I actually fell for it for a very short minute. And in that, because there was a documentary, I don't even remember the name of it, that was floating around in 2020. It was all about it, right? It was pulled. Because it got tied into QAnon, and QAnon is now labeled as a terrorist organization. Yep. Because they caused panic on a very disturbing scale. And I remember watching it and thinking, oh my God, this is what my parents were trying to tell me when I was 10 years old, or 10 years old, when I used to watch these videos back in the early 90s. Now, I'll remind you, I had no idea what satanic panic was. Not a clue. I lived it. No idea. I just felt like something wasn't right. And then this came up, right? So when I was watching this, I'm a full-blown adult by this point, and I'm falling for it. And a friend of mine, we talked about it, and her and I both were just like, oh my God, the connecting of the dots, until I started to realize that this correlated too much. So I started doing my own research again. I had a lot of time on my hands, and I realized, holy shit, this is a recycled version of satanic panic, except for now it's gone all the way to our top tier of elites, right? So then many years pass, and then you hear about Epstein, and Epstein was unalived, and the conspiracy theories keep rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. And then after a while, you start to see that at least Epstein was not a hoax, right? But that other shit is. My conclusion with it is, guys, there's a game that we all used to play when we were kids. It's called Two Truths and a Lie. Remember that game? If you've never played it, you should play it with your kids, because it teaches them how to see through shit. And it might, show you a little bit of discernment. Now, this is exactly that. Pizzagate, that's two truths and a lie. Except for, let's reverse it and call it two lies and a truth. Because that's what manipulators do. They turn it back around. So let's do that. Let's turn it back around and say about the two lies and a truth. Because that's what manipulators do. They'll give you two lies and a smidge of truth, or the truth. And then they'll say, oh, well, blah, 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 but this part was true. That's what misinformation really is, guys. And I believe that's what happened with Pizzagate. Because of all this Epstein shit. It was tied in, woven in. I think that's how you say it. So really keep your wits about you. And that game is not a game. It actually should be a way to get through life, or to find truth, is sifting through it. Figure out what that lie is, and then figure out what the truth is, or vice versa. Figure out what the truth is, and then you'll see the lies. So Pizzagate was a hoax, in my opinion. Not all of it, because some of it's tied into Epstein, but the majority of it is bullshit, in my opinion. The McMartin case, as far as the teachers with this actual child, Judy Johnson's child, that Judy Johnson thought something was wrong with and made these allegations, that was a hoax. Nothing happened to that poor child. To say that those things don't happen to other children who I don't know shit about shit, as my sister would say, when it comes to stuff like this, because you just don't know. But I wanted to give you perspective, and that's the whole point. I want to open up your mind and make you think and realize that these decisions or whatever, they all have consequences. They all have consequences. This is why now and today most people don't come forward, because they don't believe that they will be believed. And it's really sad that it had to go that way when that person was telling a lie when other people were telling the truth. Maybe not in this case, but I'm saying in other cases it was true. Like if you rewind back in time by a few years, and I brought this up in the first episode, that if you rewind it back into the case in the Michigan case with the 2 little girls and the 2 little boys that were unalived and they were taken, those families had to fight, and this is in the 70s, they had to fight to get justice, and they didn't get justice until recently, like in the 20s, like 2020 something. They finally got justice because they finally figured it out. But what was attached to that was multiple people who had multiple mental health issues, mostly men, who were kidnapping these kids. And then another one was actually in charge of a retreat, okay, with hundreds of children that were taken advantage of and not done right by. And they finally, most of those people, I think, died. The little ring there of those people who had mental illness, they all died. So those poor families weren't heard because for whatever reason. So for whatever reason, they believed him in LA, but they didn't believe him in Michigan. So wild. Or the multitude of children that were harmed in the Catholic Church, that nothing was done. So perspective. Delusion versus psychosis. Delusion is something that you believe, right? Wholeheartedly. As a matter of fact, I have my little notes. I think I wrote the definition between the definition of delusion. I didn't finish the thought, just like I took that pause. So let me see, which honestly is the main factor here of delusion and psychosis. I'll get more into it, but this is behind the scenes, my thoughts or whatever. It's going up on YouTube. So this is like an intermission. That's what you'll probably see. My headline will be intermission, opening to to episode 2. It's just my thoughts, and that's the point of a podcast, right? So yeah, cheers, y'all, and I hope I can help anybody out there, give them perspective, okay, on religion and with psychosis and delusion, and how far it can actually take you, and how it leads into actual harm, and turns people into victims when they shouldn't be. So cheers, much love, see you soon.